Welcome back to yet another episode of the Inverted Microphone. It is the first episode of 2026, so we have quite a lot to talk about. Why? Because we're talking New Year's resolutions for clubs, players, international teams around the world in celebration of the holiday. But I'm joined here with Joa'o Lara. I'm Rees Goodall. Joa'o, first off, how are you doing? How was your holiday? And do you have any resolutions for 2026?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here. It's a great day when there's the inverted microphone. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I think Manchester United fans are pretty happy as well. Their team is yet to lose this year, but that might change on January 4th when they face Leeds, but that's besides the point. Very happy to be here like always, and resolution for myself, just continuing this podcast. I think that it's been something amazing so far, and I think that it's something that can grow into something very beautiful, but we got to continue doing it, and that's my number one priority for me.
That's beautiful. I love to hear that. My New Year's resolution is to get to 1,000 followers, all platforms, for the Inverted Microphone. Ebreche as a let it all work out. We believe. But that's not the New Year's resolutions you clicked on this link to hear. It's time to get into some of what we need to see from some of these teams, some of these players. Joa'o, I'll let you go first with your first resolution. Our resolutions are complete surprises to each other. We haven't spoke about this before going on air. So, Joa'o, what is your first New Year's resolution in the footballing world that you need to see this year?
Well, look, I think I'm going to kick it off in the Prem, and I think I have to start it off with a team that's been fairly, in the headlines recently, whether it's because of, their players, or even then they've had a good string of results, and usually around this time of the year they seem to fall apart and everything starts going bad. I want to talk about Arsenal real quick. I think Arsenal, if you're an Arsenal fan, if you're watching this Arsenal team, the number one thing you want to see from this team is just consistency. Now, just like a college professor, when they repeat something 2 or 3 times, it's because it's very important. And I think this is the case with Arsenal. Their players, they have to step up in these big games, especially when there's nothing going on. And here's the thing: a lot of these teams like to play a low block. They like to sort of keep a high line and everyone back for this Arsenal squad because they are dangerous offensively. However, things have been shaping up. The month of December, we did see this a lot, especially against Wolves. 2-1, Everton 1-0, Brighton 2-1. You pick up these points, you become a team who is going to be very difficult to catch if you keep on performing and just eking stuff out, especially when it seems like you're not favored in it.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I'll add on to your resolution there. I don't think it's not just consistency that we need to see from this Arsenal side. Their resolution really needs to be win the Premier League, right? Coming third or coming second 3 years in a row, you are on the outside looking in on 2 different teams celebrating trophies in 3 seasons. You saw Liverpool win 1, City win 2. It's got to be your time. Really, I don't want to say it's now or never, but you got to look at it that way because you've got the 4-point advantage over Man City as we talk today. You have played really, really well against Aston Villa just a few days ago on December 30th to round out the year. A 4-1 battering of the third-place team in the Premier League. It seems like all things are going well for Arsenal right now, and I think consistency in their performances is certainly something that we need to see because I do think that against Brighton, they had one of their better performances of the season at times, but then it petered off as the game went on. And then you go in against Aston Villa, where if you would have assigned those 2 performances to those 2 games, you would have said, oh, they would have battered Brighton and then eked out a win against Villa. That wasn't the case, and I'm excited to see what this Arsenal team can do down the stretch of the season into the run-in. They've got Bournemouth this weekend. It's going to be difficult to win a title. It always is in the Premier League, but they certainly are building themselves into a good position to do so.
And that's why I mentioned just sort of small things. And I think a lot of these resolutions, especially for these sides, it's going to be something small. Why? Because the small things, they end up building into something beautiful. They end up building into something where you say, wow, it all started off with this one little step, which for Arsenal, being consistent, I think it's not as little as many think. It's something that it's something that might make or break this squad. Because here's the thing. Football, it's always going to be something that's not constant. It's always going to be something changing, something evolving. You're going to have players being injured, and it's up to these players also on the bench, and there's quality on this Arsenal bench. I mean, we've seen it as well when MLS, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Trossard ended up coming off the bench against Wolves. They had good performances. Now, if somebody ends up going down, you need them to continue acting and playing in these ways in order for Arsenal to be in contention, whether it's for the Premier League or whether it's for the Champions League as well, which they've been doing very well in.
I completely agree. And once again, to reiterate my position on what this Arsenal team needs to do this season to really end up not being a failure is they need to lift one of the Premier League or the Champions League. I think you'd prefer the Premier League just because you've been so close so many times over the last few years that as great as winning the Champions League is, it's not going to relieve the sour taste you have in your mouth from how the Premier League campaigns have gone. But I'll go to my resolution now. This is kind of an interesting one. And I thought about it after Liverpool drew against Leeds yesterday. That spoils what team it'll be for this resolution. But Liverpool have dropped points at home 4 times this season. Liverpool's resolution in 2026 needs to be to return Anfield back to a fortress. Last season, they dropped points at home 5 times. Year before, 6 times. They do not drop points at home very much. And say what you want about the Anfield atmosphere, I don't think it really has much to do with that, but it's more so the fact that they continue to drop points there. It's very un-Liverpool-like. Anfield, no matter how good or how bad Liverpool has been over the years, has been a place where teams go to, and they struggle to get a result, let alone a draw. It is difficult to beat Liverpool at Anfield. And I do think Liverpool has other issues. I think they need to fix their defense. I think they need to find a replacement for Konate. But you have to start with protecting what's yours. And if you're not protecting your home turf, you're not going to be able to protect much down the stretch of the season.
And I think here's the thing. I was going to touch on Liverpool as well. Mine was more for the fans, I guess. Now, look, things have been difficult for this Liverpool squad, yes. But I do think they will be able to advance from these things. Why? Their ownership has been putting money down. Is the verdict still out on Arne Slot? And are a lot of people saying, is he a good manager? Yes, but I don't think he's necessarily bad. I think that this Liverpool squad has all the pieces needed. So look, these Liverpool fans, they need to continue cheering on their team, because in this year especially, when things have gotten difficult, a lot of fans have been saying practically burn it all, sack Slot, do all these things. I don't think it's necessary yet. You're at that point in January where things are going to become pivotal soon. Things are going to become crucial, but you need to be there for your squad. And I think this goes into the case at home. You need to continue showing up. You need to continue doing all these things that are going to benefit your squad. Don't linger on the past. Don't be a Manchester United fan. Don't linger on that one bad result. Why? Because the ownership is looking at everything Arne Slot is doing. Arne Slot is looking at everything the squad is doing, and this Liverpool squad has been advancing as the season goes. So as a referee would say after a hard tackle, play on. And I think this is what these Liverpool fans have to continue doing. You can't try to burn it all, especially in a moment like this, especially in the month of January.
I completely agree with that. And, you look at Liverpool's last 3 results, they've gotten 7 points out of the possible 9, which is not bad by any means. I mean, you obviously don't want to draw against Leeds, but you look at how the matches have gone in those times. I mean, they have the 2-1 win against Tottenham. Tottenham was down to 10 men for a large portion of that match, and Liverpool struggled to score. They were 2-1 victors over Wolves, and Wolves, a very weird team, obviously one of the worst teams the Premier League's ever seen, but for some reason they only ever turn up against the Big Six. It's very bizarre. And then the draw at home against Leeds. It's something that I think can be rescued. It doesn't help that Alexander Isak is out for likely the entire season, at least, or at best case scenario, until late April. And that could be a cause for concern because that's kind of a money pit. But at the end of the day, I struggle to see too many teams that are going to be worse than Liverpool in the Premier League this season. I'm sure we're going to talk about it later. Chelsea sacking Enzo Maresca. It has been, words that you are not suitable for air to describe Chelsea's situation this season, really the whole project. And you're not going to finish below them. Man United, I think they're a little bit too far out. So I honestly think that a top 4 spot is going to be secured for Liverpool as long as they can keep controlling what they can control and keep doing what they do best, and that's, getting these ugly results.
I think we'd have to scrap the whole project if we want to. I think we'd have to scrap this whole project, this whole thing we're doing, if we talk about Chelsea's current situation without a filter. But Rees, what do you think is the next resolution? I know that you just gave yours with Liverpool, but I want to hear another one. I want to hear back-to-back. Why don't we try switching it up as well? I mean, we did mention international football. What do you think are resolutions for maybe a United States or an England, because you've talked about them on this show recently?
Those are 2 teams that I have written down. The one is a little bit more far-fetched. The other one isn't. It's more realistic, but it's more this needs to happen. It's not I'd say it's now or never for them. For the U.S., hosting this World Cup, you need to capitalize on that, and there's a million different ways you can look on how you can capitalize hosting a World Cup, whether that's the growth of a domestic league, success within the tournament. I'm going to say I'd like to see all that to happen, but the number one resolution that I think I have for the U.S. men's national team in 2026 is to play consistent enough soccer under Pochettino that you can get to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Now, that is not an easy ask by any stretch of the imagination, because you have the expanded World Cup this year. You've got to get from the round of 32 to the round of 16 and then to the quarterfinals. You'd have to win 2 knockout games. But the reason I have quarterfinals listed there instead of round of 16 is because a quarterfinal run for this U.S. men's national team, they could play some difficult teams in that round of 16 game. It would rejuvenate soccer in this country. It would bolster soccer into the mainstream that we really haven't seen. Now, again, is it far-fetched? Probably, just because I don't think the U.S. has that great of a squad. But at the end of the day, it's international soccer. It's knockout soccer. If you play your style, if you're bought into your style, you can go out and advance deep into these tournaments.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, here's the thing. This United States squad, it's been odd, right? Because we've seen moments where they look like a composed squad, a poised squad. I mean, they played a great game against Uruguay. We've talked about Uruguay and how they're not going through their best moment necessarily. But a couple of years ago, I don't think that's possible for this U.S. squad. And I don't think that this U.S. squad would have been able to sort of beat a South American nation like that. But I totally agree with you. Look, again, resolutions are supposed to be something attainable. And I think that a quarterfinals finish could be attainable. Is it a little bit of a reach? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. In my opinion, I don't think so, just because here's the thing. You have enough talent in Europe. You have talent that has been doing great. I think Christian Pulisic has been one of the best players for Milan, especially coming off the bench. When they've needed him in crucial moments, he showed up. And I think he'll do the same thing for the United States. Why? Because he's done it before. He's done it against Mexico. He's done it against all these CONCACAF squads. Now it's time for him to turn up at home in front of his people and take this United States team on a run, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that being the host nation is another thing that, again, as I mentioned before, it's something that only helps you. Really, with the exception of Qatar in 2022, we've seen so many times that the host nation, they go a little bit farther than they really should. 2018 Russia, we saw them play a very, very fun tournament where no one really would have expected that. 2014 Brazil, obviously they go to the semifinals. We all know what happens there, but still, they got to the semifinals. So you can look at it on that side of the coin. I think that's going to be one of the things that pushes them. I know we've all seen on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter since the draw happened that we kind of all have that little inkling in our mind that the tournament might get rigged. A little bit. Not rigged. Rigged's not really the right word. But there might be some iffy decision-making in some penalties, some free kicks. And I think that will only benefit the host nations. That won't harm the host nations. That's for certain. And then as you asked me to mention, the New Year's resolution I have for the England's men's national team is Well, all right. Let me preface this with a New Year's resolution is typically, a New Year's resolution is typically to, bring yourself back up, bring yourself to a place that you kind of haven't been, but also, you've seen it in the past. You can be better. It's to better yourself, right? England's New Year's resolution, in my eyes, is to win the 2026 World Cup. You haven't won a major trophy since 1966, when you won the World Cup in 1966 on home soil. 60 years later, you've got one of the most talented squads since then. You've got arguably the best manager since then in Thomas Tuchel. There are so many things that are going right for England heading into this World Cup that I think it will honestly be looked at as a failure if they do not win the World Cup. Now, with that being said, is it going to be as easy as it would have been in 2018 or 2022? Or will it be as easy as the Euro finals that they've lost under Gareth Southgate? No, absolutely not. Because you have the Spains, you have the Frances, and teams like that are going to push England and push them into having to compete against these elite sides. But if there's a year for it to get done, I think it needs to be this year for England.
That's for sure. And I mean, you have to look at the names on paper for this England squad. You see it, and I mean, the impact that they've had in their individual clubs. It'd be pointless in saying that this England squad cannot make a World Cup final. I mean, it's something that, yes, it has to happen. I feel like, once again, as you said with the United States, it's now or never. And we've seen golden generations fizzle out. We saw Belgium, for example. Belgium, that was in the same boat. You had, I mean, a prime Eden Hazard. You had all these players that had this potential and had this sort of possibility of going far, doing something. Obviously, you end up going out against Brazil, but this England squad has all the pieces. And with that, I'm going to move on, and I am also going to choose a national team. And I've talked about the national team, and I've gotten slack, and I've gotten a lot of things from a lot of people in terms of this country. And I mean, it's fairly obvious now. Mexico, I think they have to make a round of 16 finish. I think they have to reach the quarterfinals. Quarterfinals for me would be a stretch. And let me say why. I think that there's a lot of pieces in this squad working in its favor. I think that there's a lot of players that are in Europe, like Cesar Montes, like Mateo Chavez, who might sneakily get into this squad. He's been having regular minutes with Alkmaar. There are sneaky pieces that can help this team go far. There's a mix of experience, but not only that, I said it earlier on, the youngsters have to turn up. The youngsters have to show up, and they've been doing it so far. Gilberto Mora has continued to do great things with Tijuana. He's rumored to go to Europe fairly soon, and he's only 17 years old. And he's already been linked with Real Madrid, with Manchester United, with all these squads. And I think having a piece like that in a national team mixed with experience, you're going to get special things. Is the group stage going to be difficult? Yes, but if you can oust South Korea, if you can oust South Africa and play a decent game against that European Group D squad, I think that with all that momentum and having people at home supporting you, it's going to take you far. It's going to take you far, and again, we've seen it. We've seen these home crowds play an advantage for these squads, and I think it could also be the case for Mexico, who, I mean, has one of the most passionate fan bases in the world, in my opinion.
I'm just looking at the bracket now, and obviously it's difficult to predict it now because so many of the group winners play the third place teams, and there's 495 combinations as to who you could play. But I'm looking at it, the runner-up in Group A plays the runner-up in Group B. I think finishing second in Group A is a very reasonable prediction for Mexico because you've got South Korea, as you've mentioned. You've got the winner of Playoff Path D, which will likely be Denmark, who are no scrubs. We've talked about them before on this podcast. Finishing second would get them a date against one of Canada, the UEFA Path A winner, which could be Italy, Wales, Bosnia and Herzegovina, or Northern Ireland, and then Qatar or Switzerland. I think, honestly, if there's a matchup that you would want in the round of 32 to get to the round of 16, like you mentioned, it would have to be finishing second within Group A, just because Group B is by no means the strongest group. If Italy somehow qualifies, I think they would be the clear favorite to win that group, and then that gives you one of Canada, Switzerland, or Qatar, which should be a very, very easy matchup, and I could honestly see Mexico getting through to that. But again, it's so early to predict, what the bracket will be, because as I mentioned, there's 495 scenarios as to who you'll play if you win your group or if you finish third. Joao, I think this is the second time I mentioned how many scenarios there are. Probably a week before the podcast starts, we're going to go through each and every single one of them. All right, all 495, or a week before the World Cup starts, we're going to go through all 495 and give advanced analysis. I wonder how long that would take. Would we be done before the final is played? It's just insane with this format.
I think that'd be a 24-hour Twitch live stream. We'd do a streamathon with all the possible World Cup combinations, and I'd probably have 2 Red Bulls, a coffee, and something else caffeinated to keep me up during that duration.
Yeah, it will certainly be rough when we do that. Not if, when. Moving on now, Joao, do you have any more resolutions that you want to go over, either back to the Premier League or staying on international football, or even looking at individual players over the next year?
Well, look, I'm going to take it back to the Premier League again, and I'm going to go through I'm going to say 1 or 2 more of the Big Five. I think that Manchester City is a big team on this list, and I definitely can't keep it away. I think this Manchester City squad has to keep seeking unity. This team is constantly adding and removing pieces, and I mean, with the way that things have been going recently, we've seen injuries. But not only that, I think Manchester City has done an adequate job in replacing these players, whether it's, bringing up a player like Oscar Bob, or even then also in your transfers, smart, sometimes affordable transfers that sometimes pan out. But the only issue that I see with this, especially the players coming in and out, is that there's going to be inconsistencies in the squad, and there's going to be a lack of chemistry. And sometimes when you see this, you see ugly games, you see ugly matches, and this Manchester City squad has to try to find a way to stay cohesive, even with all these players coming in and out, in order to continue fighting, whether it's for the Premier League, which I think should be their number one focus, because they've essentially, I don't know if dominated is a correct term, but they've kept held of it. They've kept held of it for a very long time now, and if they can stay united, like the name of their crosstown rival, then I think that they can go ahead and compete and sort of fight with Arsenal for that Premier League title.
Great pun there, whether intentional or not. I do have to tip my cap there. I think the thing with Man City that is kind of intriguing me most is, I saw something on Twitter, and it was every result that Arsenal have dropped points in, City have also dropped points in. They dropped points against Sunderland most recently. Arsenal drew there 2-2. It's something that's interesting because, normally in a title race, you kind of see a team pull away because, City's dropped points against Villa, Arsenal beat Villa, or so on and so forth. That's just an example. And I'm intrigued to see what City can do over the next little bit. They play a very disjointed Chelsea side coming up, but they've got United, they've got Tottenham in this next little stretch. It's going to be interesting to see what City can do, especially as you mentioned. You mentioned the unity of this team. You're adding in Antoine Semenyo from Bournemouth very soon, likely. And that's interesting because Semenyo is a very talented player. Obviously, that's why he's joining Man City. But you're bringing him into a locker room that undoubtedly has egos, but also has those very talented players. And I'm intrigued to see how can you make that January transfer work out, because last season this was an issue for Man City, where we talked about last week on our transfer preview episode, where City spent a lot of money in last season's transfer window, and none of it really panned out the way you wanted it to, especially because he didn't end up winning the league with that much money spent, and none of the guys seemed to really fit into Pep Guardiola's ideals for his system at Man City. So if you can fit Semenyo in seamlessly, I think that will be even more beneficial for Manchester City this season.
But even then, I think that it's going to take time for Semenyo to fit in the squad. I think that players have to, they obviously train with each other, whether it's 5-6 times a week, but they have to try to speed up that adjustment process, and I don't know how that's done. If everyone knew how it's done, I think that transfers would fit in seamlessly. We wouldn't see these problems. We wouldn't have quote-unquote flops. But I totally agree with that, and it's very difficult, and I think that Man City were sort of in a PSG predicament last year, where PSG for many years they'd buy players, spend a lot of money, and still they'd find success in the domestic league, but they couldn't win the Champions League. I don't know if I'm sort of reaching a little too far there, but I think it's a very similar problem, and it sort of demonstrates that at times money cannot win you titles, and we continue seeing it with their crosstown rival, which is next on my list of resolutions. And this goes more for the fans. Manchester United fans, they have to forget the past. And I know this is used in a lot of arguments. Look, if you want to use the past for your arguments, please go ahead, be my guest. It makes some people mad. I've done it before, sure. But look at the team right now. Look at the list of teams. And Manchester United fans have to stop being so destructive. They have to stop being, yes, keep your high expectations. Yes, you are a big club, but you have not sniffed the Champions League. And I want to say we're in the year 2026. I want to say in 10 plus years, you have not sniffed even a Champions League final. You have not been favorites to win a tournament of that caliber. Stop acting that way. Look at the squad you have right now. It is going to be difficult to compete. It is going to be difficult to find success, and there's going to be ups and downs. Be grateful for the position you're in, but keep supporting the squad. Keep supporting the squad, and eventually, if the fans stop being critical, I think that it can cause a big enough change. It can clear up the atmosphere, because playing for a club like Manchester United is very difficult, and we've seen it on players. We've seen it with Alexis Sanchez. We've seen it with plenty of players in the past. The media is going to continue being critical, but try to make the job easier for those you support. Because if not, it's going to be the same vicious cycle. Fans want a manager out, the manager's out, and 2 years later, the new manager is sacked, and you're never going to find continuity. You're never going to find the system, and you're going to continue being little broed by many clubs across the league, because we've seen it before.
Yeah. I completely agree with everything you said there. That kind of ties into my resolution for Man United, where it's a simple one. It's just embrace change. Ruben Amorim is no secret one of the most stubborn managers in the Premier League. He's been stuck in his 3-4-3 since he got here. Now, he has made a few changes the last few weeks to the defensive shape, but I think he needs to go full on into the change away from that 3-4-3, because the 3-4-3, God bless it, it's outdated. It's outdated in modern football, and it doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite get the best utilization of all of United's star players. I think that's one of the changes that needs to be made. I also think, as you mentioned, a change that needs to be made among the fan base of United is not recognize who you are now, but that is kind of what I'm trying to say, is recognize who you are now. You are not what you were under Sir Alex Ferguson, right? Where you were winning everything left and right, Premier League, FA Cup, Champions League, you name it. Man United hoisted it under Sir Alex. Sir Alex retired 12 years ago, right? If I'm not mistaken, or 12 years ago in May. It's time to take a step into the future, right? United need to figure it out, obviously, but you can't keep living in 2012. You can't keep living in 2002. You can't keep living in all these years, so on and so forth. You've got to live in 2026, and United's ownership and board need to recognize that too. But the fans, I think they just need to stop having that highest of high expectations. They still need to have the high expectations of a Big Six club and a club with the caliber of Man United. But I think most importantly, you cannot keep this expectation that you should be competing for titles year in and year out.
That's for sure. It's very, I guess, difficult at times, and it's very, yes, it hurts. I mean, 2012 was the first year that I started watching the squad after their 2011 preseason friendly with LA Galaxy. I won't get too much into that story. It sets the bar so high, right? And you keep on watching this team for years and years and years and years, and you're like, snap, they're going to continue doing it. And it doesn't happen. Again, things take time. There's going to be cycles. There's going to be a whole process to it. There's going to be a whole... There's going to be a whole thing that has to happen before Manchester United even steps foot on a Champions League pitch and is competitive for the tournament. But you have to trust the process. You have to let it all work out. Because if you keep on changing it up, if you keep on trying to explode the whole thing when there's one trip, when there's one fall, again, I sound like a broken record, but it's essentially what happens. It's if you were to make a sort of chart, and I've seen it before, it's like Manchester United wins 3 games. They draw 1, they lose 1. The fans say blow it up, and it happens all over again. It's gonna be what continues to happen. So embrace the change, liven up, enjoy the good moments, and I mean you've suffered the bad, so I mean there's not really anything you can do for that. Just cope, I guess.
Well, I've got a few more resolutions to go over. Since we're talking about miserable fan bases, this is one that is miserable for a drastically different reason than what is going on in Manchester United. Wolves, right? They have not won a game in the Premier League since April 26th, 2025. My New Year's resolution for Wolves isn't to stay up, because that's long gone. That dream is gone. My New Year's resolution for Wolves is to simply win a Premier League game. Not even get to 10 points. They can end the season on 6 points, 9 points, however many. But they just need to win a single game. Coming off that draw against Man United, that was great. They nearly drew with Arsenal. They've drawn with Tottenham this season. They only lost by 1 to Liverpool. I believe in Wolves that they can win a game this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to put to that. The draw, if you tell me from a fan perspective, I will be canceled in 4 different languages and 28 different countries. But no, I think that is the realistic expectation for this Wolves squad. And they do face West Ham in a couple of days. So, not a couple of days, tomorrow. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning. So who knows? Maybe this resolution could be knocked out early. But the way this Wolves squad has been playing, it's so odd, right? Because against clubs that are struggling, against clubs that are in the relegation zone with them, they've struggled essentially. But whenever it comes to a top flight club, they're putting everything on the line, and it's been fairly competitive so far. I mean, we've seen it a couple of times this season.
Yeah. Do you have any more resolutions that you want to go over?
I guess for Sunderland, it's just remain positive. I think that you have to look at what you've done so far and sort of, well, first of all, be appreciative. You're 7th in the table and continue that positivity. I think you have to continue radiating a good vibe around the squad, and I guess this is more for the fans, but just continue showing up, continue cheering. Who knows? I mean, you keep on getting good results. You keep on being competitive against top flight clubs. There could be a Europa League spot in play. It's very unpredictable right now.
Yeah, it's Sunderland. You know, they're just coming off that draw 0-0 against City. That was a phenomenal result. They're finding a way to get points at home. I think one thing I'd like of them to do is to figure out how to get points away from home. I think they have 20-odd points at home, 9 away from home. That's not something that is going to be acceptable, you know, in longevity of the Premier League, but we'll see. Excuse me. I've got a couple more I'll list off here. For West Ham, interesting team to list in this, but West Ham, my New Year's resolution for them is to put a stop to this striker curse that they have going on. Over the years, they have wasted a ton of money on just these absolutely useless strikers, to put it politely. They just let Nicholas Fulkrug go to Milan. They brought in Danny Ings over the years, Gianluca Scamacca, excuse me, Callum Wilson. And I think they're wasting a lot more money this window. Bringing in Tati Castellano. Excuse me, I am dying over here. Bringing in Pablo Felipe, bringing in Tati Castellanos. No offense to either of those two guys. I wish them well, and I wish them the best of luck. But those two guys are not good enough to be Premier League strikers, especially for a club like West Ham, who won the Europa Conference League a few years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm just looking at this West Ham squad. It's just Callum Wilson. Is he experienced in the Premier League? Yes, but he's not somebody you want to have at the top of a squad like West Ham, especially in the moment you're in. You've spent cash before. You've done these renovations on your stadium. Owners have put money in this team. Buckle down. Get yourself a quality striker. If not, somebody who has, I wouldn't even say potential based, because even then you're playing with fire, and right now you are in the pit. You are in the mud. You need someone who is going to be proven. Buckle down. Splash some cash, get someone who can get the job done, and you'll start seeing the results. But stop being lazy, stop being cheap. You cannot go down. I mean, I'm not saying that West Ham is a big club, but they have history. They have history in the Premier League. They have I want to say considerable fan base. Do right for your fans and splash some cash. Fix the situation you're in, because it's not going to be pretty if you go down.
You know, this issue means a lot to me. That's why I've burst out crying here. I agree, and I think it all really started the downfall of West Ham. I know they've played some of their best football over the last few years, but it started when they moved to London Stadium. That stadium is the epitome of utter woke nonsense in the modern game. They literally have a beer garden. They have a beer garden in the stadium. Now, I don't know if you know anything about English football stadiums, Joa'o, but you literally cannot drink beer in the stadium when looking at the pitch, right? It's not allowed, so it's utterly useless for the 90 minutes that anyone's actually there for. It makes absolutely no sense. Nothing from this club is making sense. They're strikers. None of it makes sense. My last resolution has to deal with the club that we're going to have to talk about in depth over the last little bit of this show. As long as I don't die from whatever illness is currently taking over my body. If I survive, we can talk about them in depth. My last resolution is Chelsea, and it's just figure out what you are. Because a few months ago, you were in the title race. Oh my word, I'm not going to make it. A few months ago, you were in a title race. Now you're out of it. Now you've sacked your manager or parted ways with your manager by mutual consent, which we all know means you just sacked him. You sacked Denzel Maresca. Now, who knows who you're going to appoint? Sounds like the Strasbourg manager, which is, again, utter woke nonsense. I see I'm crying because of how passionate I am about this. But Chelsea needs to figure out, are they going to be title contenders under this project? Or are they going to be just fringe Champions League sides that has the potential, to drop down to the Europa Conference League, or potential to maybe upset a few teams here and there, go on a deep run in the Champions League, but still ultimately end up with nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just think in this situation you have to be intelligent if you're Chelsea. You have to, and what I mean by being intelligent is especially in selection of a manager, you do not want someone who is I'm not going to say inexperienced with the Premier League, but you need someone who knows the league inside out. You need someone who is okay, I'll say it, experienced. You need someone who will be able to get the job done. Don't dismantle all the progress you've had so far in trying something new and something creative and something that hasn't been seen before. Why? Because you have a lot of potential on this team, especially in that midfield. Besides Alejandro Garnacho, you've had these moments where you see brilliance and you've beat Barcelona and you've competed with these squads. Don't throw it all away by trying to be different. It doesn't make sense in trying to get someone unexperienced.
Yeah, and the manager they're closely linked with right now is Liam Rosenior from Strasbourg. And I worry that with Chelsea letting go of Maresca in the way that they did, it was pretty much clashing of heads with the board. I think appointing... oh, my word. Appointing him would only get that out of the way completely. He'd almost be a yes man for Chelsea and for the board, and I think that's something that is not acceptable for a club like Chelsea. You need to have a guy that is confrontational, but also confrontational in a way that betters the club. I really think that the way Chelsea got rid of Maresca is shameful. I think that Maresca was building something really good there. Obviously, this season has had its ups and downs. They've had injuries all over the place. Cole Palmer hasn't been able to stay fit up until really the last month. And I know they've dropped points in the Champions League, but I honestly think, as I've said before on this podcast, with some of the results that they dropped points in, Chelsea, a home against Arsenal, Chelsea went down to 10 men. They did lose against Leeds, but Leeds were on the up at that point. The last 3 games, they drew 2-2 against Newcastle away, in a match in which they were down 2-0 and came back, right? 2-1 loss at home to Aston Villa. Is that good? No, but Aston Villa, they're third for a reason, right? They are that high up the table for a reason. 2-2 draw against Bournemouth. Again, not one that is pretty, but it is one where you just got to kind of put things into perspective where, these big clubs, you're going to have runs where things don't go your way. I think the issue is with Chelsea in that run was that people didn't check their egos at the door, and the egos got too big, too hard to handle, and ultimately that's why Maresca is now unemployed.
For sure, and I mean, you just saw it in the way that he talked, and even then, just I don't know what sort of went wrong there. I mean, egos were a big thing, but I don't know if he could have put it aside. It's very difficult, and I want to let you continue talking, Reese, because I want to find a list of potential Chelsea managers. I know we've talked about Strasbourg's manager, but it's just, I don't know. I've seen the memes about Frank Lampard raising his hand at the possibility. It's not happening, obviously. But I've seen jokingly just John Terry thrown into that list.
John Terry would be John Terry would be a very Frank Lampard-esque pick. He's been in the academy coach for a little bit. He was with Aston Villa and Leicester City when Dean Smith was there. He's also coaching Baller League right now, which, you know what? Why not at this point? Why not, Chelsea? Let's just go all in on the stupidity. John Terry is currently the coach of... let me pull this up. John Terry is currently the manager of the 26ers in the Baller League. As I said before, why not, Chelsea? Let's go all in on this. Just be stupid as possible. Let's bring him in. He's currently 4th in the table in the Baller League. Which, you know what? Fairs. Baller League. What a competition there. Goal difference of 6. They've won 5 games. They've drawn 2. Somehow that has them on 18 points. Joa'o, do the math there. 5 wins, 2 draws, 18 points. Does that make sense? Oh, here's why. Because 1 extra point is awarded to the winning team of the Pressure Point Challenge every match day. And John Terry won the Pressure Point in Baller League. And you're telling me that he can't win the Premier League with Chelsea? Get him in. Get him in. I've seen enough.
Right now, this second. Sign the contract. We need to let the people at Chelsea know what's going on.
Oh, Arsenal's team in Baller League is currently 2nd. Come on. You watch Baller League?
But no, looking
much,
at other
Joao?
names that have been mentioned for this Chelsea job, Xavi Hernandez, Adoni Ariola, and Oliver Glasner are three of the other names that have been mentioned. People are putting their bets down. Felipe Luis is also on that list. So it should be very interesting to see who decides to step up. But the Poly Market has Liam Rossignol at 91%. Don't know if I can mention Poly Market, but I just did.
Well, yeah. Great source there, Joao. You really found the highest quality of sources that you could.
I just wanted to see what the people were saying, what the people were putting money on.
I think that out of that list, I'd probably take Glasner from Palace. I don't know. It's difficult because I love Iraola. I've spoke about him quite a lot on the Rees FC TikTok, on the podcast. What he's done with Bournemouth has been incredible. I think their issue now is that they haven't done a good enough job of reinvesting some of the transfer fees that they've received for guys like Dean Howes and Milos Kerkez. I don't think they've done a good enough job there. Palace, I think what Olivier Glasner has done there has been also nothing shy of incredible. Despite them not winning a game their last 6 matches in all competitions, I really like what he's done there. You lose Eze this season. You've obviously won the FA Cup last year. I love the signing of Brennan Johnson there. Even though he hasn't been good this season, he's obviously still a quality player. I think that's probably the direction I would go in if I were Chelsea. The issue is with Chelsea now, you don't have the pool that you have had in the past, right? Mauricio Pochettino isn't walking through the door. Thomas Tuchel's not walking through the door. Both the high-quality managers like that are not going to walk through the door. So you're getting these managers with lesser experience managing an inexperienced side. I really think it's only going to set up a disaster for Chelsea. And going back to the resolution that I mentioned about how you kind of need to figure out what you are, I think that would be figuring out they're not going to be serious title contenders for a few more years, if not even longer than that. They're going to be a team that is going to be in Europe every single season. They're going to be hanging around the top 6 of the table, but they're not going to be in that top 2. They're not going to be in that title race with just any of the targets that they have.
And yeah, I was about to mention what you had said. I was about to say, does Chelsea have the pull to steal another manager from a Premier League side? I don't think so, not anymore. And especially with the way things have been going and the way Enzo Maresca sort of left Chelsea as well. If you're a Premier League manager, you're looking at that and you're like, well, what is really going on? And how will that affect me? And could I be next if things don't go my way?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I think a big part of this Chelsea mess is their transfers. Obviously, I don't think any manager can cope with a team that is spending as much money as they have on just these pieces of scrap wood. And I know that sounds disrespectful, but they've overspent on a lot of guys. I don't think they have great talent evaluation at Chelsea. As good as Estevao has looked and as good as Cole Palmer has been, as good as Moise Caicedo has been, they have a lot of holes in this team despite spending the GDP of a good, well-built country. It's absurd to me. And I think Chelsea, honestly, is probably one of the most fascinating conversations in the whole Premier League because how can you go out, spend this money year after year after year? There's a cough, of course, and not win anything of note. I don't care about the Europa Conference League. A team like Chelsea, A, should not even be allowed to play in the Europa Conference League, and B, if they are allowed to play in it, they should walk over everybody and just pick up the trophy before they even start the first group stage match or league stage match now. Yeah. So I don't think that can be viewed as an accomplishment. But hey, Joao, you know what they did? They won the Club World Cup.
Champions of the world. Is Arsenal champions of the world? Is Manchester United champions of the world? Is Man City? No, I don't think so.
No. PSG isn't either.
Exactly. No, but again, with this Chelsea squad, just to sort of end on it, because we can go on with the jokes all day and all night and also make a 24-hour Twitch stream of Chelsea jokes. they need to get their stuff together. They need to make a correct decision. Don't go on the experimental side. Don't break down everything you've done. Why? Because the future is in balance. Yes, you have an owner who's going to spend money, obviously. But again, money doesn't buy success. You've had more misses than hits with your transfers. Do the right thing. Get someone Premier League proven. Try testing out your pool. I don't think it's like a Tottenham pool. I think they can get someone. It might not be someone you want. It might not be someone who will lead you to glory, but it'll be someone who will keep you on the right path. And if you're Chelsea, I think that's what you want this year. I don't think that winning a title is in their reach anymore, just because the way a manager would have to adapt to a squad and especially all the pieces that he has to work with. It's something that's not in this season, but I mean, once again, who knows?
Yeah, as Joa'o loves to say on this podcast, we'll just have to wait and see. Let things take time. Joa'o, have you been watching the Africa Cup of Nations?
I unfortunately have not been. I've been watching. Well, I mean, obviously the Premier League, and I've been watching more domestic stuff recently. Talk to me. What's been going on in the African Cup of Nations?
Quite a lot. We're about to start at the knockout stage, literally tomorrow. Nothing really of note, in terms of who got eliminated, except for one team, Gabon. Now, Gabon, I don't know how you say it as an American. Gabon's national team has been suspended by the government until further notice because they lost all three group games. They lost 1-0 to Cameroon, 3-2 to Mozambique, and 3-2 to Ivory Coast. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang have been banned from selection. The coaching staff has been dissolved. I didn't even know a government could do this. I don't even know if they can do this. FIFA hasn't said anything, though. I'm very, very interested to see what the future of the Gabonese nationals team is. Just because, you look back a few months ago, they played Nigeria in the World Cup qualifier, playoff, nonsense, whatever. They were 2 games away from making the World Cup. All of a sudden, your national team doesn't exist. The beautiful game.
The beautiful game, so inconsistent, always changing. Again, the measure of power the government of Gabon has over this national team, just absolutely insane. And looking at these results, I understand the loss against Cameroon. Cameroon has always been a strong side, whether it's been in World Cup qualifiers or African Cup of Nations. But the losses to Mozambique, even then the loss to Ivory Coast, somewhat understandable. But the loss to Mozambique, very difficult to see what happened there, especially not watching. I am not going to make assumptions, but just absolutely odd. Just imagine if you know how I've told you that that Mexico has been so tumultuous in its process, especially in this upcoming World Cup. Imagine a loss to Guatemala or Honduras, and the president was just like, "Yeah, let's scrap it." That's mad. That's insane. I can't wrap my head around Gabon just not being able to play, and just sort of, I want to know what that conversation was like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the worst part about it, though, is Gabon was their last group stage game was against Ivory Coast. They were up 2-1 in the 80th minute, right? At that point, if the match is blown dead, then they're through. Yeah, as one of the third place teams. Instead, they allowed 2 goals in the final 10 minutes and lose 3-2.
So
just putting salt in the wound.
Just, I guess, seeing the way everything has been with the game recently, and a lot of players being suspended because of betting and gambling is something that we're seeing, especially in basketball. We've seen it with I think Mykhailo Mudryk was also part of this case. We've seen it with a lot of players. Could you do you think that they're suspecting that maybe there was some sort of thing that happened like that? I mean, we've seen in the game. I'm not saying that it happened. I don't want to speculate as well because, again, these are very harsh accusations. But what do you think was the basis of it, or do you think they're trying to wipe everything out completely? What is going on, Reese? What do you think is going on there?
I don't know if they're. I think it's more so they're just ashamed. I'm going to read their full statement here. Given the Panthers' disgraceful performance at the Total Energies Morocco 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, and considering the multifaceted effects that are diametrically opposed to the values of ethics and exemplarity advocated by the Fifth Republic, the government has decided to dissolve the technical staff, to suspend the national team until further notice, and to remove players Bruce Ekule Manga and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from the team. Furthermore, the government calls on the Gabonese Football Federation to assume all its responsibilities. I think they also, again, the main part of it is disgraceful. I think they had higher expectations, and at the end of the day, they're a nation that, unlike some of these other countries, they stand up business. Their racks, they count up digits, and at the end of the day, a fourth place finish is unacceptable. I don't know though. I'm not going to pretend to be Gabonese. I don't speak their language. I don't think. I think they speak French because Aubameyang's French, and let's see. Let's look that up. Yeah, they do speak French. I was right. Romance language of the Indo-European family. See, ball knower, language knower. But we'll see. They've always kind of had a weird problem because when Aubameyang was with Arsenal, he'd post on his Instagram stories, and I remember a couple times they were trapped in an airport. There's always something weird going on there. But moving on, Joa'o, a few minutes left. Is there anything in the world of football, in the world of anything, honestly, that you want to talk about today?
Well, look, I guess going back to North America, Liga MX is back next week, and you guys did end up seeing some of the shorts. I do want to talk about more of what goes on in that league because it is very volatile, and you will be seeing shorts some point along the season. But it's very odd because I know that I've talked to you about this before, Reese, and sort of the process of pro and rel and especially MLS, and Liga MX has finally introduced it once again. Apparently it's supposed to be something coming back in 2027. There is a specific criteria that teams are supposed to have, which includes, I think it's $30 million. Just they want to make sure that these teams are financially stable. They have the stadiums, but a lot of these things seem very far-fetched. And not only that, this season we see one of the, you could say, fan favorites come back to Liga MX. Mazatlan FC is no more. They're now in the second division. Atlante is back, and they will be competing. They will be competing in Liga MX. So it'll definitely be interesting to see them not only back on the pitch, but also seeing how they fare in Liga MX competition.
I did not know that about Mazatlan and Atlante. Fun story about Atlante. Phoenix Rising team that Joa'o and I both cover in the USL Championship. They went down there for a friendly in 2023. Absolute chaos. Rising's kit man got a red card, and there were fights all over behind closed doors. So, hey, chaos. That's what we love to see. But Pro Rel, I'm always an advocate for that. I'm glad to hear it's coming into Mexican soccer. Hopefully, we'll get to see it on this part of North America sometime soon. Maybe our New Year's resolution should have been that. Maybe that we should have just spent the whole hour talking about how we will have Pro Rel sometime soon in this country. Because as of right now, I'll just continue to play my Football Manager database where I've set all the leagues to have Pro Rel. But at the end of the day, it's a new year, so that means new football. Not really, but it's the same football. Joa'o, but before we leave, though, did you see the scores from the New Year's Day fixtures in the Premier League?
Yes.
1-1, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. If that's what we're going to see in 2026 in the Premier League, I'm going to find a different sport to talk about. We might start talking table tennis on the inverted microphone. If not, we'll be back next week with another episode. Joa'o, where can they find you on Twitter? We'll start with that.
The Joa'o Lara on Twitter.
TikTok
at the JL Football.
The JL Football. Follow me on Twitter at Rees Goodall. I changed my username to have my full name. TikTok at ReesFC. Make sure to follow The Inverted Microphone on YouTube, The Inverted Microphone, TikTok at The Inverted Microphone, Instagram at The Inverted Microphone. We might even get on Facebook, just so your grandma and grandpa can follow us as well. Like, subscribe on the YouTube, Spotify, wherever you can find your podcast. But it's a beautiful game. But it's a way more beautiful game when the World Cup starts this year. Goodbye.